She thought I was on a business trip, but I was watching her the whole time. You ever get that feeling in your gut? Like something's off, but you can't quite put your finger on it? That was me 3 weeks ago. Sitting in our kitchen, sipping lukewarm coffee, watching her pack a weekend bag with way too much excitement for a supposed girl's getaway. She was smiling, humming to herself, tossing in dresses she hadn't worn in months. Dresses she used to save for special dates. With me, I told her I had a last-minute business trip out of town. She didn't even blink. No concern. No, I'll miss you. Just a casual drive safe. And she went back to folding clothes. That's when I knew. Not just suspected, knew. So I changed my plans. There was no business trip. No airport. No hotel. I packed a bag, left the house like normal, even parked at the airport for effect. But once she thought I was gone, I doubled back, booked a small Airbnb across town under a fake name and set up shop. If she wanted to play games, I'd show her what it's like to lose at her own. The next day I watched. I knew where her best friend lived, the one she said she'd be staying with. So I parked nearby around the time she said she'd be arriving. An hour passed. No one came. 2 hours. Still nothing. I called her just to be sure. "Hey babe," she answered. Wind in the background, sounding a little too cheerful. "Just got to Ashley's. We're about to order food and do facials." "Sounds fun," I said, pretending to smile. "Take some pictures." "Oh, totally," she chirped. "Love you." She never sent the photos. Instead, I followed her car's GPS. She forgot I installed an app for emergencies. Funny how cheaters always forget about the little details. According to the app, her car wasn't at Ashley's. It was parked outside a high-rise downtown, a luxury building with valet service and private elevators. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe she was visiting someone else. But deep down, I already knew. You don't lie about your location unless you have something to hide. I waited till after sunset. When she finally came out, she wasn't alone. He was tall, broad-shouldered, laughing like he had just won the lottery. And her? She was smiling in that way I hadn't seen in months. Her hand grazed his arm like it belonged there. She didn't even look around. Didn't even check if anyone could see her. That was her first mistake. I snapped photos. Not to confront her with. Not yet. This wasn't going to be some dramatic hotel room scene with shouting and tears. No. I wanted this to unfold slowly, the way a trap closes in silence. The next day, I started laying the groundwork. I called her from my trip, asked how her night was. She said they had a movie night, complete with ice cream and pajamas. Said she missed me. I smiled through the lie and told her I'd be back in a few days. She had no idea she was already caught. But I wasn't done watching, and she wasn't done lying. What she didn't know was that I had a plan now. A way to make her expose herself completely, without ever realizing I was behind the curtain. And it all started with a dinner invitation. The dinner invitation was innocent enough, or at least it looked that way. I texted her the next morning, pretending my business trip had been extended another 2 days, and that I'd be back late Sunday night instead of Friday. She responded with a sad face emoji and a half-hearted, "Miss you already." I knew she was lying through her teeth, probably already planning another secret rendezvous while I was away. That's exactly what I was counting on. I needed her to feel safe, comfortable, and just a little too confident. Because the more comfortable she got, the more careless she'd become. That evening, I called a friend who owed me a favor, someone who used to work security in that high-rise building. He still had access to the camera system in the lobby and the elevator feeds. Within minutes, I had video clips on my phone of her stepping into the building with that same man. Twice. Once on Friday night and again Saturday afternoon. Both times, she was dressed up, laughing, holding onto his arm like they were already a couple. I watched the footage with a strange mix of fury and clarity. She wasn't hesitating. She wasn't torn. She looked happy, like she had already moved on and just forgot to tell me. I didn't smash my phone. I didn't yell. I just sat there in the silence of that Airbnb, heart pounding, knowing that something inside me had changed. She wasn't just cheating. She was living a double life, but she didn't realize I was one step ahead. That's when the idea hit me. I wasn't going to confront her. I was going to make her confess. I was going to build a situation so perfectly crafted, so psychologically tight, that she'd unravel all on her own. That dinner invitation was phase one. I called her Sunday afternoon. "Hey," I said, sounding tired. "I just got some good news. My meeting tomorrow was pushed, so I'll be flying in early tonight. Thought we could have a late dinner. Just you and me." There was a brief pause on her end. "Oh," she said. "Yeah, that sounds great. I'll get something ready." I could hear the panic in her voice. She hadn't expected me to come home early. Probably had another visit planned. Now she had to reshuffle everything fast. I waited until after sunset, then pulled into our driveway like I had just come back from the airport. She met me at the door with a forced smile and a kiss that felt distant. The house smelled like candles and overpriced perfume. She had cooked something, but barely touched her plate. She kept glancing at her phone like she was waiting for a message, or afraid of one. I played along, told her I missed her, asked about her weekend. She gave me the script, hung out with the girls, binge-watched a show, nothing exciting. I nodded, smiled, acted like everything was fine. But then I said something that made her freeze. "You know, I ran into Ashley's boyfriend at the airport," I said casually. "He said she was out of town this weekend visiting her sister." Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "Oh, yeah," she stammered. "She left Saturday morning. I stayed at her place Friday night, then came home." I tilted my head. "That's weird." "He said she left Friday afternoon." Silence. Her eyes darted, and I could see her brain scrambling for an answer. I leaned back in my chair, still smiling. "Maybe he got the days mixed up," I said. "No big deal." That was the moment I knew I had her spinning. And the best part? I hadn't accused her of anything. Not yet. I just let the lies build pressure inside her like steam in a pipe. Eventually, it would burst. I could feel it. I could see it in her nervous hands, in the way she suddenly became too interested in clearing the dishes. She was unraveling. Slowly, quietly. That night, while she slept beside me, I went through her phone. She'd changed her password since the last time I checked, which only confirmed my suspicions. So I didn't try to break in. Not yet. I had a better idea. I wanted her to unlock it herself. The next morning, I casually mentioned that my phone had died and asked to borrow hers to check my email. Her hand twitched slightly before she handed it over. She hovered close as I pretended to scroll through my inbox. Then I made my move. "Oh," I said, faking surprise. "What's this notification? Who's Jason?" Her face paled. She snatched the phone from my hand like I had touched fire. "It's just someone from work," she said quickly, avoiding eye contact. "Work, huh?" I said, giving her a long look. "Weird. Didn't think anyone at your job sent heart emojis." She didn't respond, just stood there, frozen. Lips parted like she wanted to say something but didn't know where to start. I left it there. No accusations. No raised voices. Just silence. The silence always says more than shouting ever could. And now that she was officially cornered, I just had to wait for her next move. I didn't have to wait long. The tension in our house became a living thing after that morning. She walked on eggshells, flinching at every casual question, every glance that lingered a second too long. I didn't push. I didn't confront. I just observed. That was the beauty of it. She didn't know what I truly knew, how deep into her lies I had already dug, and that uncertainty was eating her alive. She started overcompensating, waking up early to cook breakfast, texting me during the day like she used to when things were good, leaving love notes on the bathroom mirror. It would have been sweet if I hadn't seen the footage of her kissing another man's neck in a hotel elevator just 48 hours earlier. But I played my part. I smiled, hugged her when she leaned in, told her I appreciated her effort. And all the while I was gathering more evidence, more moments, more cracks in her story. I used the GPS app again, found her car parked in a different part of town on a Wednesday afternoon, nowhere near work or her usual hangouts. I parked nearby, watched from a coffee shop across the street. She entered a little wine bar tucked between two apartment complexes. And 30 minutes later, he showed up. They didn't even try to hide it. They kissed at the table like they were in their own world. Held hands. Laughed. He even fed her from his fork. That night, when she came home, she told me she stayed late at the office for a team meeting. I nodded. Tough day. The worst, she sighed. We had to rework the whole project plan. Yeah, I said, sipping my tea. Nothing like spreadsheets and timelines. She smiled, thinking the storm had passed. But I was just getting started. I made a new plan, one that would expose everything, leave no room for escape. I needed a setup, a moment that would pull her lies into the light, in public, where masks were harder to hold. That's when I remembered our anniversary was coming up. She hadn't mentioned it. Not once. Probably assumed I'd forget or wouldn't be around. So I pretended to forget too, until the last minute. That Friday morning, I handed her an envelope with a printed reservation inside. Dinner tonight. Just us. 7 p.m. She blinked in surprise. Oh, I thought maybe you had work. Cancelled everything, I said. Felt like we needed this. She looked unsure, like she wasn't sure whether to be happy or scared, but she smiled and said she'd be ready. What she didn't know was that I had also messaged her lover from a fake account, pretending to be her. Let's meet tonight, I wrote. Same place, same time. I need to see you. I even added a heart emoji at the end to make it believable. It was risky, but I needed him to show up. Needed them both in the same place at the same time, unaware I'd orchestrated the whole thing. That evening, she dressed up more than usual, curled her hair, did her makeup like it was a first date. That stung more than I expected. She hadn't done that for me in months, maybe years. But I swallowed the ache and drove us to the restaurant. A nice place, dim lighting, intimate tables. I had picked a corner spot with a perfect view of the entrance. We sat, ordered drinks, and I made small talk about work, the weather, anything to keep her from noticing how often I was glancing at the door. She seemed nervous too, checking her phone between sentences, texting quickly and locking the screen like she didn't want me to see. I knew she was trying to cancel. Maybe he hadn't replied. Maybe he was already on his way. And then, 20 minutes in, he walked through the door. Her face went white. She turned her head just slightly and saw him before he noticed her. He looked around, clearly expecting someone else. She panicked. Her hand reached for her purse. I need to use the restroom, she stammered, getting up so fast her chair scraped the floor. I let her go, watched as she rushed past him, ducked around the bar, and disappeared down the hallway. He kept scanning the room, confused, standing there like a question mark. I stood up, walked over slowly, and tapped him on the shoulder. Looking for someone? I asked. He turned, blinked. Sorry, I think you've got the wrong. No, I said, smiling. I don't. He looked at me for a long second. Something clicked. The resemblance, the tension. Then his eyes shifted, uncertain. Who are you? I'm her husband. That shut him up. He stared at me like I had just dropped a grenade at his feet. I could see the calculation behind his eyes, trying to piece it together. She said, he started, but I cut him off. I know what she said, and I know where she's been, and I know exactly how many times she's lied. He looked uncomfortable, embarrassed, maybe. I wasn't angry at him. Not really. He wasn't the one who made vows. But I needed him to understand that the game was over. She's in the bathroom right now, I said, probably trying to decide whether to run or cry. Either way, she won't come back to this table. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I left him standing there and walked out the front door into the night air, heart pounding. I didn't need to see her face. I'd seen enough. When I got home, I changed the locks, packed her things into boxes, set them by the garage with a note that read, "You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." She called me 12 times that night. I didn't answer. She texted me paragraphs. I didn't read them. The trap had closed. She just hadn't realized yet how deep she'd fallen into it. And I wasn't done yet. The next morning, I stood in the living room, staring at the boxes by the garage door. It felt surreal how neatly everything could be packed, how easily a life could be compartmentalized when the illusion finally shattered. Her perfume still lingered on the clothes I folded. Her favorite jacket, the book she always read before bed, the framed photo of us from our last real vacation. Back when I still believed her laugh was genuine. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stood there, silent, letting the finality of it all settle over me like ash after a fire. I wasn't mourning her. I was mourning the version of myself that believed in her. She showed up late in the afternoon. I didn't answer the door, but I watched from the upstairs window. She knocked, then pounded, called my name like it still meant something. I saw her spot the boxes, saw her lips move in disbelief. Then her phone came out. A call. Then another. I ignored both. After the third one, she sent a voice message. I didn't play it. I didn't need to. I knew the script. Tears, apologies, confusion, maybe even a few half-truths sprinkled in to test the waters. But none of it mattered anymore. She had spent weeks constructing a fantasy with another man while I watched in silence. And now she was standing outside that same silence, begging to be let back in. I finally opened the door, not to let her in, but to hand her the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper, a printout of the photos I'd taken of her and him together, time-stamped. No words, just proof, just the truth, plain and merciless. She opened it, and I saw the exact second her face crumbled. Her shoulders sagged. Her mouth moved without sound. When she looked up at me, eyes glossy with the beginnings of tears, I still didn't speak. I stepped back, closed the door, and locked it. She didn't leave right away. I heard her crying through the door, then yelling, then begging. She went from, "I can explain," to, "It didn't mean anything," to, "You don't understand." But I did understand. I understood everything now. That all the late nights, the sudden plans, the way she avoided my eyes when I asked about her day, those weren't coincidences. They were choices, and choices have consequences. Eventually, she drove away. But that wasn't the end. People think that once you kick a cheater out, you're done. That the hardest part is over. They don't tell you about the aftermath. About how friends start choosing sides. How family members ask uncomfortable questions you can't answer without reliving the whole betrayal. They don't tell you how hard it is to sleep in a bed that still smells like her shampoo. How every room in the house echoes with memories that now feel like lies. Or how you start to question yourself. Not just what you missed, but who you were to ignore it for so long. The messages didn't stop. She emailed. She left voicemails. At first, it was apology after apology. Then came the justifications, how she felt unseen, how she didn't mean to hurt anyone, how it just happened, as if an affair were some accidental event that fell into her lap and not a deliberate betrayal repeated over weeks. She said she missed me, that she didn't know what she had until it was gone. But that was the thing. She did know. She just didn't care. I never responded. I let her drown in her own silence. But I wasn't just ghosting her. I was preparing. There was one last card to play. One final piece that would leave no doubt about who she truly was. Not just to me, but to everyone she had manipulated. I gathered everything. The messages, the photos, the timestamps, even the footage I got from my security contact. I put it all together into a neat digital folder and sent it anonymously to her lover's workplace. I didn't know if they had rules about employee conduct, but I figured he deserved to feel the same uncertainty she had gifted me. Then I reached out to her closest friend, the one she didn't think I spoke to often. I didn't accuse. I just asked simple questions. Did she ever mention someone named Jason? Was there ever a girls' weekend in the past month? I could hear the hesitation through the phone. And then, finally, the sigh. Her friend confirmed everything. She didn't want to, but the truth had been gnawing at her too. She'd always felt uneasy about the stories, the lies, the rushed explanations. And now, with the facts in front of her, she couldn't defend it. It spread slowly. Our mutual circle started hearing bits and pieces. The sympathy shifted, from her to me. People started reaching out, not with pity, but with respect. "You handled it better than most would," Can't believe you stayed that calm. But calm wasn't what I felt. I felt cold, focused, like I'd survived a storm by becoming part of it. A week later, she showed up one last time, not at the house but at my work. She waited in the parking lot like a lost child, eyes puffy, shoulders slumped. I walked past her without breaking stride. She called out once, twice, then louder. "Please just talk to me." I stopped, turned slowly. "You didn't talk to me," I said. "You talked to him." Her lips trembled. She stepped forward. "It was a mistake. I was stupid. I ruined everything." "You didn't ruin everything," I cut in. "You just revealed what it really was." She looked like she wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. She just stood there, defeated. "I trusted you," I said, softer now. "And you used that trust as a cover for your lies." She cried. "I didn't." Then I turned and walked away for the last time. But even then, I knew the story wasn't over yet. Because the final twist, the one that would truly haunt her, was still coming. And I was already setting the stage. It had been almost a month since I'd walked away from her in that parking lot. A month since I packed her life into cardboard boxes and watched her world collapse in silence. A month since the man she thought she'd built a future with stopped returning her messages. Once he realized she wasn't single, and certainly not honest. I had learned through mutual acquaintances that he had blocked her, deleted her number, and even filed a complaint to HR about being misled. Apparently, workplace romance was frowned upon in his company, especially when one party was married and hiding it. She lost both of us in the span of a week. But I wasn't done. Not yet. See, people like her, they rely on control. They thrive on secrets, on being able to manipulate what others know, what others see. I had shattered her illusion, stripped away her mask. But the final blow, the one that would make her regret every smug lie and every whispered, "He'll never find out," that was still waiting in the wings. It wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about truth. About making sure she could never spin the story into something it wasn't. I had already destroyed the fantasy she built with him. Now it was time to take back my narrative, to tell the world what really happened before she had the chance to rewrite it. I started with the truth. I recorded a video, not for pity, not to air dirty laundry, but to speak plainly. I sat in my living room, the house now quiet and clean, and looked directly into the camera. I talked about trust, about betrayal, about how sometimes the person who promises to stand beside you forever is the one chiseling away at the foundation when you're not looking. I didn't use her name. I didn't need to. The story was universal, and I wanted people to hear it, to feel it, to recognize the signs before they ended up in the same darkness I had walked through. Then I posted it. It went viral in a matter of days. Thousands of comments, messages from strangers who'd gone through the same thing. People who thanked me for my honesty, my composure, my refusal to let the pain turn me bitter. It was strange being seen like that, by people I'd never met, people who only knew fragments of what I'd endured. But it felt right, like I'd taken the broken pieces and made something solid out of them. Something real. She saw it. I know she did. She messaged me again, but this time it wasn't begging or justifying. It was a single line. "You told everyone." No punctuation. Just that, like a ghost whispering through the cracks. I didn't respond. There was nothing more to say. She was the one who made this choice. I simply stopped hiding the consequences for her. In the weeks that followed, I rebuilt my life. I started going to the gym again, reconnected with old friends, took weekend trips to places we used to talk about but never actually visited because we were too busy. Turns out, I wasn't too busy, I was just too blind. But not anymore. I'd learned that healing isn't loud. It's quiet. It's showing up for yourself in the little ways. It's laughing again without feeling guilty. Sleeping peacefully without suspicion curling around your thoughts. It's knowing that the worst has already happened, and you survived it. Eventually, I took off the ring. Not because I forgot what it stood for, but because I finally understood what it didn't. It didn't mean commitment to her. It didn't protect me from betrayal. It didn't hold any magic. It was just metal. A symbol. And like all symbols, it only held the power I gave it. So I let it go. Quietly. No ceremony. Just a small metallic sound as it hit the wooden drawer and rolled to the back, out of sight. They say revenge is best served cold. But this wasn't revenge. This was closure. This was truth. This was peace. And if you've ever found yourself questioning your gut, your instincts, your worth, don't wait for the lies to stack up like mine did. Don't give someone unlimited chances just because you love the person they used to be. People change. Love fades. But your self-respect, that has to remain untouched. Thanks for listening to my story. If it resonated with you or if you've been through something similar, drop a comment. Let others know they're not alone. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. I've got more stories to share. Stories about truth, about rising after betrayal, about becoming stronger than the people who tried to break you. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning.